3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the second Fragments Silicon review for the evening. I hope Skype noises aren't picked up by the microphone over there. Like at any rate.
On my end, it's turned off because I know how this game works.
No, I mean, Ogre dropped and showed up again when the credits music was playing. So, it's like Skype has a blip feature now.
I have that turned off.
Yeah, it's like I usually have it turned on because it's actually helpful to know when people are not here. Or when people do come in. So, anyway, getting back on track. The game up now is Deadbeat Heroes. We did an interview about this on Tuesday with the developers Upstream Arcade. And indeed, if you wish to learn more about the creation and production and, all of that good stuff, I will direct you to our archives for further listening. Either in video or audio form. We are available in many, many ways. And though if you did miss that and are watching this, Deadbeat Heroes is a retro-styled action brawler in the vein of games like Beautiful Joe and Power Stone. It's like where, you play a deadbeat hero trying to stop evil from taking over 1970s London.
To clarify, it's retro in that it takes place in a retro setting, not in that everything is. I mean, it's a 3D game. It's not like it's trying to look 8-bit or anything.
Yeah, it's like it's actually retro styled in a decade perspective, as it's going for not direct it's taking place in 1970 for a very specific reason, and that is like decade shifts. How do I put this? The 80s flowing into the 90s didn't, it wasn't just like the trends changed overnight. It took time. And you usually see the confluence of that at the very beginning of a decade. Like 1980, you had 1970s trends going in, and so on and so forth. It's a fairly reliable thing, and the reason why they chose this is because even though this game is taking place in the 70s, it's got a lot of 1960s influence, specifically the Adam West Batman TV series, which is a decidedly 60s thing. So they got the creators got around, even though that is a 60s cultural icon, let's set it in 1970, where, even though 70s trends are starting, like, the funk music that's right out of a 70s cop show, for example, they can still have the 60s stuff as well. It's actually fairly clever. And not done all that often in terms of aesthetical choices, because, when it comes to homaging a decade, you usually get the theme park ride version of it. It's like the 80s, new wave retro, big hair, neon colors, and all that shit.
Right.
Anyway, so that aside, it's also very British, very London, like
Oh yeah.
you know,
Most of
As
the
you can
addresses, I
see
think, are
by
real.
what is basically Big Ben up on the level screen there.
yeah.
I think
So-
most of the stage names are actually real places, although I don't know if their appearance has anything to do with the real places.
Every place is a real place in London, but yeah, it's not. It doesn't look like that real place.
Right.
It's kind of one of the problems with the game. It's very bland in its level design, like extremely fucking bland.
Yeah.
And it doesn't.
Yeah,
change.
every stage is pretty much 3 or a few rooms full of any number of enemies, and then sort of a last room that has more enemies.
Yeah, actually, it's exactly you 3 fighting rooms and a series of connecting tunnels or hallways or something like that.
Yeah.
It looks like it might as well be procedurally generated.
Yeah, you might think so, but
I mean,
know,
it's
every-
not, but it might as well be in terms of the amount of variety there is.
yeah, I'm like,
Hmm.
honestly, I kind of wish there was a randomization mode, not just in terms in level design, but in terms of like enemy placement, because, well, you're going to be fighting the same enemies over and over again, and that's kind of how you're supposed to do it at the higher, the end game, like, because it's a very predictable learning curve. You can get through the levels really quickly in the beginning, like
Uh-huh.
like I'll be honest. A lot of the early stage feels like it was designed for like the 3DS or something, because you can blaze through some of these levels in like a minute or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
your general average mook takes 2 hits.
Mhm. It's not until you get to the late game / end game um, where the actual stages will give you an actual challenge. Like I actually spent a good 2-3 hours beating the last level because, well, by that point, the mooks were actually strong and had very dangerous weapons and came in very dangerous combinations. And sometimes they gave you the worst fucking powers. Seriously, fuck the ice power and fuck telekinesis. Like,
Hmm.
just the worst powers in the game, and they gave me both.
The
In the
ice
same-
power is only somewhat good against guys with like the rapid fire guns. Other than that, it's kind of worthless.
Yeah.
It's like the ice power I found not all that useful. Like, it's useful in a pinch, but compared to like fire or explosion, yeah,
Why freeze
No,
a guy when I could just make them fucking disappear?
yeah. And telekinesis was a bit too wonky to work properly. Like,
I haven't seen that one yet, but I'm imagining it's physics based.
sort of. It's like, and yeah, like each level you gain a new power, and like the central conceit is after you beat all 3 stages, you face a boss, and let me tell you, the most disappointing aspect of this game are the boss fights, because they don't really get any harder. Like not even cheap ways. Like the final boss can be taken down in as many hits as the first boss.
Hmm.
You would at least think, the the final boss would like take 5-10 hits, something like that. But no, it's still the 3, and you win.
And it would be less of a problem if, like you said, you get power-ups, and the power-ups, you get them from people who have a special method of attack.
Right.
And when you get them, you go into a powered-up state, and your special attack becomes a special attack based on that instead of just a really powered-up punch.
Yeah.
The problem is that when you're in the powered-up mode, your basic attacks can hit things that can only be hit by special attacks, such
Right.
as bosses.
Yeah. Right. So like an important dynamic of like the specialized lieutenants with powers is you can only hit them with what is called the turbo combo. I'm sure it's appeared on our gameplay footage, but that's where you build up a certain amount in your meter. Like I think it's 5 orbs, and
Something like that.
5 or 6.
yeah, and then you hit the Y button, and then you do an unstoppable attack. And
the
that's how
orbs
you,
are dropped by practically everybody when you hit them.
yeah, and you're supposed to use that to defeat, to get the powers from the tougher opponents. It's, when you get the powers though, your basic attacks can take the enemies out, both both the lieutenants and the bosses. Like, so, it kind of fucks up the strategy. Now, you'd think like their artificial and arbitrary shield is broken. So
Yeah.
you don't need to use the power on the enemies.
Also, your basic attack is just really pretty solid, and you rarely need better than that, it feels like.
And the boss stages get a little tougher, but that's based on more the mooks and the amount of mooks that show up versus the actual bosses. They really just didn't get any harder. That was kind of frustrating, especially after the difficulty curve did spike up appropriately in the regular stages. That being said, this game is probably best played in short bursts. It's a brawler, so it's going to get repetitive pretty quickly. It's not helped that this game is so formulaic. You might get bored quickly as well.
Yeah.
So, and this is the kind of game I would.
Everybody there?
And, it's not a bad game or anything like that, but it's not a particularly impressive game either. I'm being honest here.
Yeah, it's the missions are pretty much most like the same. There's not like a variety really of goals.
Yeah, and the humor is very British.
Yeah, it's fairly funny. I mean, you're clearly not. I mean, you're hero enough, but you're clearly mostly in it just as a business thing, and your teacher is kind of sketchy.
Sketchy is a word for it.
And definitely not just, doesn't really care whether you live or die, and
yeah,
doesn't want you to call him, doesn't want you to call him anything that indicates you might be getting too close, or like at all.
Right, and other problems are okay. Everyone feels the same. Like the character you select has
just cosmetic.
Yeah, it's purely cosmetic. Everyone moves at the same speed. Everyone hits the same. Everything is the same. That really
I had a weird control issue. I got the dash punch, and I had a hard time getting it to go off.
Yeah, I think
there was a delay on the punch while dashing.
Yeah. So the central rhythm to this game is combos and punching and dodging. They were really adamant that there's no block button here. So and the way you get to the upper echelons of point scores is by doing things like juggling.
I had a hard time with getting good combos because things tend to get knocked down, and then it's hard to combo off them.
Right. Or the
especially
other way,
since you have a really big punchy hand.
or the other way is you attack each one of the goons. That'll keep your combo going.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, sometimes I hit them all at once, and then it's like, oh, great, now I have no one to combo off of.
yeah. Unfortunately, that's in the service of a great big fat nothing, because there are no rewards for higher ranks. Like, if
You
ask-
just need to get a high enough rank to get the clear.
Yeah, to qualify, which I think
Yeah.
is a C or maybe a D.
C.
yeah, it's a C or higher. Yeah, and on the like second world, it's a D, and the first is a U. Um, the U, I assume, is some British grade that we don't have, like replacing the F.
I don't know, uncompleted, unfinished, maybe, I don't know.
Unsatisfactory.
Oh yeah. I mean, I don't know exactly what it is, but yeah, there are weird other grades like that for not good enough.
Right. And I'm trying to remember. I think they said if leaderboards are there, or I don't think they were able to get the leaderboards.
Yeah, I don't think the leaderboards are in, and I don't recall if them saying if they're actually putting them in or not.
Yeah, I'm like,
It seems like this is the kind of game that would want that, but
yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
because otherwise there's not much incentive to do better than okay.
basically, it's like, I guess if you're very competition driven, you can S rank everything for bragging rights, but in practical terms, there's no reason to do that.
Like,
And
are there even Steam achievements for this game?
yes,
There are.
there are, but here's the thing: they're of the most basic. They're progression achievements. You know,
Mhm.
you get an achievement for like beating each chapter and getting all the teammates. I got all of the achievements simply by going through the game. So yeah, there's
There's not much fancy for achievements. I think there's like one for not getting hit in a room or not missing or something in a room, but
maybe, but
those aren't hard things to do on some of the easier rooms. So. Especially since the dive punch kind of has a little bit of homing on it, it felt like.
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Basically, it feels like the game's a bit unfinished because there are just some features that you'd expect in a modern game that are not there or are rendered pointless because, okay, I S ranked. Usually you get something out of that. You get a costume, you get new music. You get something. Not
Even if it's
nothing.
just extra points for the leaderboard, but since there aren't a leaderboard.
Yeah, it's like you can't even do the competition thing correctly because there's no leaderboards.
Yeah, no bragging rights.
Now, and that's kind of like where I'm going with the overall rating with this. To use its own grading system, it gets a C.
Yeah, I'd say it doesn't even. It's not. Leaderboards aren't the only way that it could accomplish what it seems to be trying to do. But if it didn't have leaderboards, it needs more incentive inside the game to do better.
Yeah, because this game is building around this combo and score and all that stuff. Like, just playing through the game is all right, but it's not going to last you very long.
I mean, granted, I'm not very good. I didn't do so great at this, but I had a hard time getting combos because, like I said, I kept punching too many people at once, so they were all knocked down.
Right. Like, or
and on screen, I just unlocked the last move in the game.
Yeah, there are only like 4, I think.
Mm-hmm.
There's a really limited move set.
Yeah,
Right.
I was hoping there would be more, but it didn't sound like there were. So
No.
then again, some of those are kind of tricky to use anyway. I mean, the uppercut could be nice for like aerial chaining, which probably helps with combos, but. And I had trouble. There's apparently stuff you can do like wall running to get around people and keep your combo going for longer that
Yeah,
you can do, but it's not always the easy. The amount that it's allegedly rewards you with is not commensurate with how hard it is to pull off well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just kept flowing into combos. You know,
Yeah,
doing air dashes and shit.
Yeah, your best combo is mostly jumping and punching and dashing, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, there's a really good concept here that's not connecting fully because, well, quite frankly, not everything is there. You know, or rather, why bother? Like, why bother reaching beyond average?
Yeah, this feels lacking.
It's like, even if it's, your reward is clothes or whatever, there's usually
Or
something.
like Hotline Miami masks.
Yeah, it's like, there's usually something. Like, I've never seen this before. Like, or if it's a bragging rights reward, it's usually like the final thing in the game. It's like, after this, there is no more game. But here, it's like, no, there's no unlockables. There's no incentive. And I'm like, I can see why there are incentives, because there's no sense of competition, because there's no leaderboards. There's no way for people to verify your score. Not even like online, because.
But Adam, you're supposed to turn all your lights out and take a picture of your screen well focused and then mail it into the magazine.
I'm like,
and make sure your machine is in the picture so everyone can tell there are no cheating devices attached.
God.
And the war flashback's coming back.
Oh.
No, that was just good, wholesome Nintendo Power nostalgia.
Yeah. Like, but it's like there's not even any online multiplayer. Because
there is something called streaming mode, but we didn't actually look into what that actually is, and we forgot to ask.
Yeah, I'm like, it didn't seem to, they didn't bring it up either, so.
It's mentioned on the store page. It's kind of, what was it? Chat appears in the news ticker. Chatters become baddies and are featured in end-level credits. Yeah.
Like, I just shrug at that.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, that's a cool game.
Yeah. I mean, that's.
So I guess if I really wanted to punch myself in the face, since I'm not, technically, I don't know, I'm not actually running the stream. I don't know. It's kind of cool in concept, kind of like the streaming mode from, what was that game with the goblins in it?
Hold on here. I'll find it.
Live research.
Yes. Like.
Got too many games.
What is this, a Steam train now?
It can be, if we can get that that amount of people.
Like.
But anyway, not that important, I guess.
Yeah.
Anyway. So, moving forward with the price. It retails for $15 with the regular edition, And I want to say 1850, something like that. It's 10% off with the bundle. That is to say, the soundtrack.
With that, I would probably rate this as wait for sale.
Yeah.
Unless they
really,
actually,
unless you really like beat 'em ups and are really good at self-motivating.
yeah, like if they add a
Mhm.
leaderboard or something that actually rewards you, then $15 is a perfectly adequate price for this. If
Yeah,
they don't
they
add
did say
any
they
of
were
that,
still-
then
They did say they were still looking about features to add, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's
maybe,
like,
maybe if they add some features, that would be a good price.
Yeah.
well,
Right now, it's a little bare for that.
yeah, we can't really rate things on maybes and promises of the future.
yeah, because
Mhm.
there have games that we've been promised content and the developers closed up shop.
Among other, or just didn't bother.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I guess it could go down as wait for sale or look for added content.
Mm-hmm.
Because everything's just a little too not just basic but repetitive.
And this one's it's a bit longer than some of the other games we've done, but
Yeah,
it doesn't always matter how long something is when it doesn't change much.
pretty much. So, and it's unfortunate that we have to give this game kind of a low rating. But it is what it is.
Yeah, there's a pretty good game here. It's the problem is there's nothing to make you strive for more. Especially if you, get used to the combat. There's nothing that evolves.
Yeah, and it kind of goes against its central thesis, which is you want to rack up the big combos for the big score, but why bother
Yeah.
if there's no way to validate that?
Yeah, there's no payoff for the big score at this point in time.
Yeah.
That's just too big of a glaring flaw to ignore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm not even a big fan of leaderboards, but something.
Yeah,
Well, and that would
like-
at least make people who find this game enjoyable want to push for higher scores.
yeah, it's like I don't care about leaderboards in the least, but there are a lot of people who do, which
Yeah.
is why they're there.
Mhm.
There's a reason why things like games done quick exist. This would be one of those things that would fuel that type of thing.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So, unfortunate, but hopefully it goes on sale soon or something like that. Now, that'll about do it for this review. Be sure to stay tuned for our last review of the evening with Shiny Dolphin Games' Clash Force. And